Hello. This better lighting. Anyway, this is going to be a brief look at one of the leading contenders for the 2020 Democratic nomination, Kamala Harris. And there are a number of interesting things about Kamala Harris. The fact that and there are a number of things I think are disqualifying, not just to the general electorate, but to Democratic primary voters. One of the things I think people aren't giving enough weight to is the fact that she's basically a prosecutor. That's what she was before being elevated to the Senate. And one of the animating forces in the Democratic Party right now is a zealous rejection of law enforcement and, by association, people like district attorneys and prosecutors. And this was how she made her bones. I think some of you might remember that the new DA of Philadelphia, Larry Krasner, he was installed by the Democratic Socialists of America, people who don't who are opposed to traditional law and order type candidates. And he had virtually no qualifications for the post. I mean, other than being a lawyer, he just reflected the proper ideology. And Kamala Harris did, for her part, she wasn't necessarily a social justice warrior. When she was a prosecutor, she was just a prosecutor. So I think that's going to be a huge hindrance. But yeah, if you want to go even deeper than that, you can look at her background. This is a woman whose father was an Indian Tamil. He was from a state, Nadu Tamil, and her mother was a Jamaican professor, I believe, that came over to the United States as an adult. And she only spent 6 or 7 years. She was kind of like Barack Obama. She spent 6 or 7 years in the United States, and then her mother took her to Montreal. So she had very little exposure to American culture, kind of like Barack Obama. Now, you had all these conspiracy theories about where Barack Obama was born. Some people saying he was actually not born in the United States, in Kenya. And all these theories floating around before he presented his birth certificate. I always thought the debate around that was kind of absurd and beside the point. But there was a kernel of a fascinating aspect of it that I don't think a lot of people explored, was that Barack Obama was raised to a large extent in Indonesia, a completely alien foreign culture ruled by Islam. He even and to the extent it's not Islamic, it's you have indigenous folk cultures. Like, there's the famous case of where Barack Obama, in his memoir, he wrote about eating dog meat. And he was also, he lived in Hawaii up until, I think, his graduation from high school, a state which didn't even join the United States until the 1950s. So you have someone running for president of the United States who has very little familiarity with American culture. Now, I mean, that's not necessarily a problem unless, which is the case, you represent a state like California, which has become a post-American state, where you have the legislature trying to install illegal aliens on state boards. A bill that was vetoed by Governor Jerry Brown. It was so absurd that even an open borders fanatic like Jerry Brown vetoed the bill. And you have a state attorney general that calls for the prosecution of people who aid ICE in detaining illegal immigrants. And Kamala Harris supports all of this. She wants to turn uh, California into Mexifornia, into a post-American, complete the transition into a post-American state. And you have to imagine a lot of this is political opportunism, but some of it you have, just like Barack Obama, you have to think of it as a person who's just not doesn't believe America as it's currently constituted or as it was when she grew up is worth preserving. And you have to wonder if normal people, patriotic Americans, are going to sign off on this. I mean, there's already the very well-grounded accusations that she advanced politically because she had an affair with Willie Brown, who was a prominent politician in San Francisco and the state of California back in the 80s and 90s. So you have a not very eloquent, not very formidable woman who has no real attachment to this country, who's going to try to drum up votes in places like Iowa and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, all states that Hillary Clinton lost. So you have to wonder how successful she's going to be. Personally, I don't think she's going to be that successful, even though the left and the identitarian left is going to be super turbocharged to find a non-white woman to be the standard bearer. She doesn't have the credentials either from a progressive point of view to fill that bill. That's just my opinion.